el tiempo se acaba, pero no se vaya porque después del corte todavía nos da tiempo de ejecutar un blues en fa.
Este aplauso no es solo para Eugenio Toussaint y Agustín Bernal y Gabriel Puentes por lo que tocan, sino también es porque Eugenio Toussaint sí cumple sus promesas, aunque ustedes no lo crean. Porque ¿cuál sería mi sorpresa encontrarme sentado junto a mí, aquí a mi izquierda, a Bill Bruford? Bill, thank you for being with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Bill, I don't want to start by asking you why you left rock for jazz, because everybody has asked you that question.
No, it's no problem.
I want to ask you, why did you leave jazz for rock when you were a kid?
Oh, well, it's a little bit of history in London at the time, in the late 60s. You know, May 1968 was a big year for change of many sorts in England. And one of the new things was rock music, you know, very exciting era, just at the end of the Beatles. And there was a feeling that any musician could do anything, and that actually jazz at the time was very political, very atonal, quite unpleasant on the ear, and very left-wing, very political. And rock music, with Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and all that, seemed much more exciting, you know. So everybody was forming groups. But nobody knew whether the group was going to be rock or jazz. It was just music, and we worried about rock or jazz later. That was not a problem. It had many influences. So most of the jazz players just fell into these new, exciting groups.
Now, the first group you played with, which is Yes, has a very strong jazz influence, very many jazz motifs, jazz elements. Was that of your doing? Was that your contribution to Yes?
Well, progressive rock, the English style of music, was not associated with jazz at all. So I just played what I played, and so long as it sounded different to the other guy, they were happy.
Did you like rock music back then, or did you miss jazz?
I really liked all music, and I particularly liked music more than drumming, and drumming more than drums. I've always liked the totality of the music, not just the drumming.
And you are a composer yourself also.
I write some music myself.
Do you write on the piano, or you write it?
I write at the piano, certainly. Yeah.
But it's very unusual for a drummer to be a frontman of a jazz band. Though.
It's very difficult too.
But are musicians comfortable with the idea of the drum player, the percussionist, being the band leader, the frontman of the band?
They will be comfortable if they sense that the drummer is a competent musician. Mm-hmm. You know, and he understands their position as musicians, and enough about harmony to make some sense.
Of course. Well, and you've had established enough name for yourself as a composer, as everything that, you know. But you're playing with mostly young musicians now, right?
I play mostly with younger, much younger, and I always play with better musicians than me. This is how I get my music lessons.
This is the only way.
Yeah, I never went to music school, so for me to keep learning, I have to play with musicians who are better than me.
I didn't go to school either.
So I always ask the young guys who always know so much.
Exactly.
They get younger and better.
And there's no generation gap when discussing music or composition?
Well, I think he looks at me like his father, you know, which is really a problem.
Bill, do you miss at all the rock and roll lifestyle? Not the music, but not the arenas, but the lifestyle.
I was much more interested in the music, actually. Don't laugh. I really liked the music, and I really liked trying to get better on the drum set. And I spent a lot of time studying and practicing, and actually all that other stuff you read in newspapers about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that's mostly, a lot of that was in newspapers.
Mm-hmm. Really?
From my point of view, certainly, yeah. I never seemed to figure out who was sleeping with who and who was taking what. I was too busy studying, you know.
So you don't miss that at all?
Not at all, no. Salary wasn't bad.
Exactly, that you might miss.
The salary was okay.
Yeah, you might miss that, but not...
Is there a big difference between jazz salaries and rock salaries?
Oh yeah. You know, I sometimes use the analogy of acting. Movie stars, you know, if you were Sean Connery, famous a film actor, If you went to Hollywood, you make a big movie, you get paid way too much money for doing way too little. But you take the money and you come back to England and you play with the Royal Shakespeare Company, where you are paid much too little money for doing really a lot of work. So all musicians, I think, get used to the idea of being grossly overpaid at 1 minute for doing nothing and horribly underpaid the next minute for doing everything.
But it's worth it.
It's worth it, because we love it.
I have a feeling, and we were talking about this before we started the interview, about the jazz situation, the word jazz, the way it has been misinterpreted nowadays.
It's really a problem.
It is, I think, a problem, yeah. Especially in the 80s, I think it really got loose. It's like, where is really jazz? I mean, can we interpret jazz as a language? Can we interpret jazz as a, I don't know how to say it, as a way to sell records or not sell records, which is usually the case. I don't know. What do you feel?
Jazz was popular once. Popular music was jazz. Jazz was popular music. Last time was in about the 1930s, you know, with the big bands and dance, and that was some lovely music. For me now, the conversation is not, is it rock or is it jazz? The conversation is it played live with human beings who look each other in the eyes and play something, or is it computer-based? For me, I have more in common with a rock group that plays live and experiments with its music on stage than I do with any kind of computerized music. So for me, and I guess for you too, it's about playing live, having a conversation like this with other people in real time in front of other people.
Even though you did experiment with electronics in the 80s.
I did, but live electronics.
That's the difference.
Live electronics, not prepared artifact. Now, I don't mean that one is better than another. I just mean that the prepared computer artifact is not for me.
No, not for me either.
What's for me is that thing, that piano, you know, and the drums, and all happening at once. That's what's exciting.
Well, that's the beauty of music, I think.
The beauty, it's a social cooperation between people.
Exactly.
That's where we get our meaning from, rather than sitting alone in our basement, you know, inputting information.
You've also said that music is oftentimes the expression of the subconscious mind. What would your music reveal about your inner self?
Musicians' characters very quickly by the choices they make on their instruments. Music is often very much about what you don't do on an instrument, almost more than what you do. It's what you choose to leave out, I think. So music, and what makes you an individual in music is your choices. The choice of style, the choice of notes, the choice of individual phrase, the choice of career and musicians you play with. So that's what makes an individual, I think, is his choices in music.
The free will to choose the career you want to have.
Yeah, you choose, and sometimes it will be very uncomfortable, your choices. In fact, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. Yes. Sometimes.
Can we put you in one?
Yes, of course you can.
There's the drum.
This is going to be uncomfortable.
Bill Bruford, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Eugenio Toussaint, Agustín Bernal y desde luego Bill Bruford en Suave es la Noche es la posición incómoda de Bill Bruford de este año. Y muchas gracias a ustedes por haber estado con nosotros. Gracias a todos nuestros invitados. Gracias a Carlos Loret de Mola, que yo sí lo conseguí para que viniera a tocar aquí. Tú también conseguiste a Bill Bruford. No lo niego. Vino a tocar fibras muy sensibles del periodismo nacional. Y muchas gracias también a nuestra compañera Janine Derbez, como de costumbre. Yo soy Nicolás Alvarado. Esto es Suave es la Noche. Muy buenas noches.
Todo por servir se acaba, si no es que ya era inservible desde el principio. Terminó el programa y terminó julio. Los esperamos en agosto en la próxima emisión de Suave es la Noche. Hasta entonces.